What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Jack Stands podcast, where our wood backdrops are fake and our wheels are real. This week we are talking about Formula Drift St. Louis and basically this whole season. What is going to make this season so crazy? But before we get into that, we have had a lot of people reach out and ask about how my dog is doing. If you guys are new here, about a month ago, my dog and I got attacked on our morning walk, and she suffered some pretty serious injuries, but she is healing up. She has got a ton of energy, and all she wants to do is go play frisbee and go on hikes in state parks, and we're probably about 2 weeks away from doing that, and I'm really excited that she is healing and we can kind of get back to some normalcy, because it's been really crazy in the household of Chase right now. Lots of money's going out the door, not a lot of money's coming in the door, and that means less money for car parts, but that is okay. We're working on it. We are gonna still make things happen. It's been too hot to install car parts anyways. I'm not trying to burn like a baked turkey on Thanksgiving or anything like that. So what's gonna make Formula Drift so crazy this year? This year has been so nuts with COVID, and Formula Drift is no excuse. They are suffering just like everybody else, and the season has suffered. And so now we've got 4 rounds with back-to-back doubleheader weekends, basically. And so what makes this season so crazy? Well, I'll tell you. There's only 4 stops. They're going to St. Louis, Monroe, Formula Drift, Texas, and Irwindale this year, and each one is a doubleheader weekend for the Pro League. COVID has also made some of the most legendary drivers back out of the season, and that's really going to mix it up, and it's really opened up the championship. It's really anybody's game right now. With these doubleheader weekends, there's a few things that make it even more interesting, and that is there's no qualifying this year. Basically, you show up, you're qualified, and everybody gets to compete for the championship. Everybody gets to compete for a podium finish. To my knowledge, there's only practice and then competition. And so we are completely getting rid of qualifying, and it's really going to be nuts. It's really going to be an insane season. And as I talked about before, there's 2 drivers, 2 of the most legendary drivers in the league that have backed out. Who are those drivers? They're James Dean and Peter Visick. And if you guys don't know anything about drifting, I suggest that you just go watch some clips on YouTube. I don't know, type in Formula Drift Texas 2019 and just watch the whole thing. You will not be disappointed, because it was an insane round. And this year is no different. It's going to be absolutely insane. So James Dean and Peter Visick are 2 of the best drivers in the league, the dynamic duo, and they're known as Candy Machine, okay? They're a cool group of guys. They drifted for Worthhouse Drift Team. They're a European drift team, and now they're not even drifting for Worthhouse. They're completely off the team. They're going to do their own thing. They said they will be back, and this news is all very fresh. It happened about 2 weeks ago, and if you guys don't know, James Dean is the 3-peat champion. He won in 2017, 2018, and 2019, and that's never been done before in Formula Drift history. He has carved his name in Formula Drift history for the rest of lifetime, basically. He is one of the best drivers, if not the best driver in Formula Drift, and I mean, that means this year there's going to be a new king. So who is it going to be? We're going to talk about some predictions. We're going to talk about some really interesting statistics, but who's won and who's lost at these 4 rounds. There's only 4 rounds, and really nobody knows what those rounds look like. Especially with a doubleheader weekend, are they going to keep the same track that they had on the day before? You know, how's that going to work? Nobody knows, and we're all anxiously awaiting how they do this. And so I'm going to make some predictions. I've looked at some data from 2018 and 2019 to kind of help make this prediction. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the top 3 drivers in 2017 or 2018 and 2019, and then we're also going to talk about the 4 rounds that are going on and who those top 3 drivers were in each round, okay? Does that make sense? And if not, then make it make sense, because I don't know how else to explain it to you. Okay, so 2018, the top 3 drivers were James Dean, Frederick Osbo, and Peter Visick. In 2019, the top 3 drivers were James Dean, Frederick Osbo, and Odi Bachi. And because we're talking about James Dean and Peter Visick so much, I want to tell you, in 2019, Peter Visick was 4th place, and he was only 15 points behind 3rd. So he was an extremely competitive driver and almost podiumed last year, but just barely got beat out by Odibachi. As mentioned before, there's 4 rounds. What are those 4 rounds, you're asking? I'm sure you're just anxiously wanting to know what those 4 rounds are. They're St. Louis, Monroe, Texas, and Irwindale. I'm really excited for Formula Drift Texas. There's always a lot of good competition, and the track's always really, really fast. And so I'm really excited for that. And so to hop in to each of those 4 rounds in the 2018 season, the top 3 drivers in St. Louis in 2018, we're going to go 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, were Frederick Osbo, Matt Field, and Chelsea DeNova. 2018 Monroe, we had James Dean, Ryan Turk, Peter Visick. 2018 Formula Drift Texas, we had Peter Visick, James Dean, Frederick Osbo. 2018 Irwindale, we had Von Gittin Jr., Frederick Osbo, and Chelsea DeNova. And if you guys see me looking down, if you guys are watching the video version of this podcast, I've got all of it written down in my notebook, and so I just want to make sure that I'm accurate. I promise I'm trying to keep eye contact, but it's really hard when I'm trying to make sure I get all this right. So just bear with me. You'll get to see my pretty face here in a second. 2019 St. Louis, we had James Dean, Frederick Osbo, Peter Visick. 2019 Monroe, we had Peter Visick, James Dean, and Daijiro Yoshihara. And Formula Drift Texas in 2019, we had Chelsea DeNova, James Dean, and Chris Forsberg. And then 2019 Irwindale, we had Ken Gucci, Michael Essa, and James Dean. Now you guys just heard a lot of repeating names, especially James Dean, Peter Visick, Frederick Osbo, and Chelsea DeNova. Now remember, 2 of these drivers are completely out. In fact, 2 of the most dominant drivers in those 4 rounds aren't even going to be there this year. So it really opens up the championship and really makes for such an interesting year, because it's really anybody's game right now. And guys, I have no idea what's going to happen. It's really insane, and I'm really excited for this year, because usually you can look at it and be like, okay, James Dean has won the past 2 years, and he's probably going to win 2019, and Frederick Osbo is probably going to get 2nd place. But that's not going to happen this year. There's a new king in town. There's a new sheriff in town. Somebody is coming in to replace James Dean as the king of Formula Drift. And who's it going to be? Well, we're going to make those predictions. They're going to be the best educated predictions they can be. And I want to give you guys some background on Frederick Osbo and Chelsea DeNova. So who the hell is Frederick Osbo? Well, Frederick Osbo is one of the best damn drifters in the league, if not the world. And in fact, Frederick Osbo has watched James Dean raise that championship trophy from the 2nd place seat for the past 3 years. For the past 3 years, he's watched another man raise his trophy. He wants to win. And I think he's coming in with that chip on his shoulder. He's gotten 2nd place in the past 3 years, and he wants his turn. It is his time. And I think Frederick Osbo is coming out to win in 2020. There's a few things going against him. He's got a whole new chassis. The Mark V Supra is a great car, and that's the car that he's drifting. He's got a great drift team. In fact, they build some of the best cars in all sports, in all motorsports, drag racing, drifting, time attack, things like that. And they build their cars in such a way that if something mechanically happens to the motor, they can replace that motor in a very quick turnaround. And so if they can keep the car together and the chassis is rock solid, then I think Frederick Osbo has a wonderful shot at winning the 2020 season. But what about Chelsea DeNova? Chelsea DeNova, you heard his name not as much as Frederick Osbo, James Dean, or Peter Visick in those 4 rounds in the past 2 years, but you heard his name some. He won, I think, 3, if not 4 of those rounds in the past 2 years. So he's obviously very good at these rounds. And why is that? Well, these rounds are usually a little bit more fast, and Chelsea DeNova is pretty much the no-lift king. Chelsea DeNova does not lift his foot off the floor. It is pedal to the metal anytime he can be, okay? And in the 4 rounds that are happening, like I already said, he won, or at least podiumed, at least 3, if not 4 of them. So it's going to be really, really crazy. Chelsea Denofa has a rock solid car as well. Chelsea Denofa, he drives for the Mustang RTR team, and that car is rock solid. He's teammates with Von Gittin Jr., and that is just a mashup of pure skill and level, is next level. And so I think Chelsea Denofa has a really solid chance of winning, if not podiuming, is that a word? He's going to podium this year, I think, for sure. Chelsea Denofa is kind of a wild child, and he just really has this aggressive driving style that is really nobody else sees. And so if you were chase driving this guy, he produces so much tire smoke that, like, you are just blind. You're just blinding. You can't, you're driving blind. You have no idea where you're going, and you really just have to know where the track is. James Dean talked about this last year at Formula Drift Texas, okay? And so it's super, super hard to follow Chelsea Denofa because of all that tire speed. He is just he's next level drifter. He's really, really good and really solid. This season's also really special for me because one of my favorite YouTubers of all time, Adam LZ, is now in the pro leagues. Last year he was Pro 2, and this year he moved up to the pro leagues because, one, financially it made sense. If you're going to drive in Pro 2, you might as well bump yourself up to Pro 1 if you have the license, and just do it because everybody's driving the same rounds. It's just Pro 1 drivers are driving back-to-back weekends. So why not get that seat time with these pro drivers and make it happen? So that's exactly what Adam LZ is doing. He's got the same chassis as last year, and it's pretty much bulletproof. And so I'm really excited to kind of see him just go off the rails and do really, really well. Adam LZ is a fantastic driver, and if he can keep his car together and not crash, I think he has a solid shot of being a top 10 driver his rookie year, and I'm really excited to kind of see that happen. I think he is going to be an absolute insane driver that's going to kind of mix up the group a little bit. He's friends with a lot of these guys, and I think he's really going to mix up the group and do a killer job. Hold on, guys. I've got to get a sip of coffee here. If you're watching the Jack Stands podcast on the YouTube channel, this is an official Jack Stands podcast coffee mug. If you're listening to this podcast on Spotify or Apple Music or Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to podcasts, hop over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, and check out the coffee mug. My girlfriend made it for me, so she's a keeper for sure because she supports me in everything I do, and I love her to death. And so she made this coffee mug for me. Really excited about it. It's my new favorite coffee mug. So super pumped. Now back to Formula Drift. There's also a few things that are really going to mix up this year that I just found out about. Reading some of the comments on the Formula Drift YouTube page, I learned real quick that there's 4 or 5 drivers coming from Japan that are like some of the most elite Japanese drifters in the league over there, and they're coming over to the United States to compete in Formula Drift USA, and that can really mix things up. Now, they've got some things going against them because they've never seen these tracks before, they've never drifted on these tracks before, and so their cars may be set up differently. And also, when you're importing a car that way for competition, it's really just difficult to make sure that everything happens in the right way. And so logistically, it's just a nightmare, I feel like. And so if it's happening last minute, I worry about like cars not getting here on time, or tools or tires or whatever. But the drifting community is so cool because everybody is there to help each other out. And that's why it's really hard to have a favorite driver in Formula Drift, because they're all friends. Everybody is a good friend at Formula Drift, especially at the pro level, and they're all just trying to compete to win. But they're all there to help each other out. Of course, they're competitors, and they're all competitive, and they want to win. But like at the end of the day, they're best friends. If you guys watch Formula Drift Texas last year, Peter Visick slammed into Frederick Osbo last year and destroyed his car. And Peter Visick destroyed his car too, and just the utter distraughtness, I know that's not a word, but Peter Visick was so upset that happened, that, I mean, it's one of the most touching pictures you'll see, because they kind of just like hugged it out on the track, and it really was a touching moment. And I don't think you see that anywhere else. I don't think there's another motorsports where something like that can happen, and the driver who was at fault it goes up and hugs the other driver. And honestly, I don't know that the other driver in any other motorsport would be accepting of a hug, right? I think he'd be so mad or whatever that it'd probably just be a fight on track or something. And you don't really see the camaraderie that you see in Formula Drift anywhere else. And that's what I love about it. Everybody's friends, everybody's there to compete, but everybody's also rooting and cheering themselves on. And so I think it's really awesome. So let's kind of wrap this up here. Who are my top 5 drivers for Formula Drift this year? I think, so we're going to go 5-1, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In 5th place, I think Ryan Turk takes 5th place this year. And the reason I think that is him and Frederick Osbo are teammates this year. And so what's going to make that interesting is Ryan Turk is not drifting his GT86 this year. He is drifting his... basically, he's drifting Frederick Osbo's old Toyota Corolla hatchback, which just dominated and is pretty much a bulletproof chassis. They can do an engine change or an engine swap in like under 45 minutes. The team that they're drifting for is absolutely insane, and they build some of the best chassis in the world. 4th place is Odi Bachi. You heard his name a few times. He was a podiumed last year, and I really think he's got a good shot to be top 4, if not top 3 this year. Odi Bachi is a great driver. He's consistent. His chassis doesn't change. It's the S15, and he just really has a solid car that really never falls apart unless something crazy happens. And so I think if Odi Bachi can kind of keep it together, drift really well, he has a really good shot at podiuming, but I think he's going to be 4th place because I think 3rd place goes to Chris Forsberg. Chris Forsberg has won 2 championships, and he's no stranger to the podium. He wins a lot, and I really think Chris Forsberg gets 3rd place this year. He's got a great chassis. He does everything really, really well, and I'm really excited to see Chris Forsberg kind of come out. He's an OG to the sport in the United States. He's one of the grassroots guys, and I think he comes out, gets 3rd place, and just does a killer job. 2nd place, so 2nd and 1st place, in my opinion, can kind of flip-flop a little bit. I think you guys know who I'm going to say, but I'm gonna lock it in, but on my notes over here, I've kind of got an arrow to where they could switch either way, so if it does switch, I'm also still right, kind of, okay? So 2nd place goes to Chelsea Denofa. I think he's got a solid car. His chassis is solid. It hasn't changed from the year before, so he knows the car. He knows how it reacts. And I think he really, really wants 1st place. I just think the guy who I picked for 1st wants it more. I think Frederick Osbo gets 1st place this year. I think if Frederick can keep the car together and the chassis that they've built for Frederick Osbo is actually solid, it's going to be a good year for Frederick Osbo. I think he's going to win. The only thing that I'm worried about, like I said, is that chassis. You can test drive a chassis as much as you want, but you really never know what it's going to do unless it's been pushed to 100% every single time you drive it. And that's what happens when you're a competition. It gets pushed to the limit every single time. And so I think if Frederick Osbo can keep his car together, I think he wins. I think he wins the championship in 2020. Rookie of the Year, so every single year they do Rookie of the Year. I think Adam LZ gets Rookie of the Year this year, and I also think he's a top 10 driver. I think Adam LZ can easily disrupt the league a little bit and become a top 10 driver this year, and just really do stellar. I think with Peter Visick and James Dean out of the league this year, it opens it up for drivers like Adam LZ who are rookies. Maybe they don't have the most, I guess, street cred in the pro drifting league, but they've got a lot of experience drifting in general. And so I'm really excited to see Adam LZ kind of flourish this year. I think he's Rookie of the Year, and I think he's 100% a top 10 driver, no doubt about it. Now, of course, I don't know who these next 5 drivers from Japan are. I don't know what their skills are. They're supposed to be some of the most elite drivers out there, but we don't know, and I don't know who they are, and they didn't tell us who they were in the video that Formula Drift put out yesterday. And so I'm really excited. I cannot wait. I think this year is going to be absolutely insane. I think it's going to be one of the craziest years of Formula Drift we've ever seen, and I can't wait to see it happen. So guys, I will see you guys next week. Thank you guys so much for listening. This wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't plug some things. So if you're listening to this podcast everywhere that you listen to podcasts, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because this is, in my opinion, my humble opinion, not biased at all, this is one of the best, if not the best, automotive podcasts in the world, and I am really excited to see things flourish here. I think we're headed in the right direction. We've got new viewers every single day, and so I'm really excited about all of that. And if you want to follow me on YouTube, then go over to my YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button, because there are some installs coming very, very soon. It's just been so damn hot here in Texas, and when you're working in a garage that's no AC, and like you have one Ryobi fan that's blowing at you, it kind of feels like somebody's blowing, you know, air through a straw in your face. It turns into an oven in this garage, and it's really uncomfortable, and I don't like it. And so I haven't worked on my car. We got a really cool video coming up, so make sure that you guys hit that subscribe button. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for watching, if you're watching this, and I will see you guys next week. Peace out, have an awesome day, and I don't know, go do a burnout this weekend. Peace.